Alien women carried him like a trophy, but their real plan was no joke. Rain fell hard against the ruined battlefield, washing away the smoke and the smell of burnt metal. The human soldier, Daniel Cross, lay half-conscious on the cold ground. His vision blurred and his ears ringing. He remembered the blast bright light, the shockwave, and then nothing when his eyes focused again. He saw shapes moving through the mist, tall figures with long strides and strange glowing armor. For a moment, he thought it was rescue from his own side, but as they came closer, he saw they were not human. Two towering alien women approached, their skin a faint silver blue, their eyes sharp and glowing faintly gold. They moved like hunters, quiet and confident, their faces unreadable. Before he could react, one knelt beside him, her shadow falling over his face, and without a word, she slid her arms under his body. Daniel wanted to protest he could still walk, maybe, but his body refused to move. He felt himself lifted with ease, as if he weighed nothing, his head resting against the alien's shoulder. The other woman stayed close, scanning the surroundings with a weapon unlike anything he had seen. The mist closed in again, and the sound of distant engines faded as they moved away from the battlefield. At first he thought this was some kind of field rescue, but the more he looked, the stranger it felt. Neither woman wore any medical gear, and they never checked his wounds. Instead, they carried him like something fragile, something valuable. They didn't rush or stumble, they walked in perfect rhythm, and every few steps, they looked down at him with the same strange expression, half pride, half possession. Where are you taking me?" Daniel asked weakly. The alien, Holden, glanced at her companion, then back at him, but said nothing. Her eyes, however, were focused, almost satisfied. The silence between them grew heavier, broken only by the soft hum of their armor and the crunch of their boots on wet ground. They passed through a forest of twisted metal towers, each one bent from old explosions. The air smelled sharp like burned wires and strange flowers. Daniel tried to move his legs, but the alien holding him only tightened her grip, shaking her head slowly. He was too tired to fight, but a question gnawed at him. Why were they avoiding everyone? Once they spotted a group of soldiers, alien soldiers in black armor, patrolling ahead. Instead of approaching, the two women took a sharp turn and vanished into a narrow canyon. Their movements were deliberate, like they were following a path only they knew. Every turn, every shadow, felt planned. Daniel's unease grew. If they were rescuing him, why hide? Hours seemed to pass as they climbed higher into the mountains. The mist thinned, revealing sharp cliffs and narrow ledges. The alien carrying him never stumbled, even when the wind howled and stones shifted underfoot. Finally, they reached a ridge, and Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Ahead, carved into the rock face, was a massive gate, black metal, lined with golden symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. The symbols were nothing like human writing, but something about them felt ancient. The gate stood twice as tall as the women, and on either side, statues of alien warriors loomed, each holding a spear pointed toward the sky. The woman carrying Daniel slowed. Glancing at her companion, they exchanged a look, and then stepped forward. As they passed between the statues, a deep rumbling echoed through the mountains, and the gates began to open. Inside was not a military base, but something far stranger, wide halls carved from stone, lit by a soft golden light that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Daniel's heart pounded. He didn't see any other humans, no signs of battle or medical care. Instead, alien guards stood at attention, their eyes following him as if he were the most important thing to enter here in years. Some even bowed slightly as the women passed. The woman holding him didn't slow until they reached a grand hallway lined with long banners. Daniel's eyes widened when he saw the images on them. They all showed the same thing, a human-shaped figure with glowing eyes, standing above kneeling alien women. His mouth went dry. This wasn't a rescue. This was something else entirely. Before he could ask again where they were taking him, the women turned down another corridor, At the end stood a tall, ornate door, guarded by 2 armored warriors. The moment they saw him, they stepped aside without a word, bowing their heads. The doors swung open, revealing a massive, empty throne room. The throne at the far end was huge, carved from dark stone, and clearly waiting for someone to sit on it. Daniel's skin prickled as the women carried him forward. Every instinct screamed at him. Whatever this was, it wasn't harmless. The air inside the fortress was warmer, almost heavy, carrying a faint scent of metal and strange spices. Daniel could hear the echo of their steps bouncing off the high walls, his mind trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Everything about this place felt old, yet alive. Like the walls themselves were breathing. The alien woman carrying him never spoke, but her grip remained steady, almost protective. The other walked ahead, her weapon raised as if expecting danger. At every turn, they passed through arches lined with carvings of battles Daniel didn't recognize. In many of them, human-like figures stood at the center, always surrounded by alien women kneeling, offering gifts, the same image, again and again. It sent a cold shiver down his spine as they moved deeper inside. Daniel noticed there were no men at all, not human, not alien. Every face was female, some armored, some wearing flowing robes. All of them paused to stare at him. Their eyes followed his every move, some with curiosity, others with a kind of hunger he couldn't explain. One woman in the shadows whispered something, and the sound spread quickly down the corridor like a ripple in water. Soon, he could hear murmurs in every direction, voices rising and falling, speaking a language he couldn't understand. The woman carrying him stopped in front of a massive doorway, draped with dark blue cloth. She glanced at her companion, who gave a short nod, then they stepped inside. The room beyond was huge, its ceiling lost in darkness. Long tables stretched across the space, each covered in food that looked fresh and steaming, exotic fruits that glowed faintly, golden bread that shimmered like it had dusted light on it, jugs of liquid that gave off sweet scents. The tables were empty of people, but everything was prepared, as if for a great event. Daniel felt a knot forming in his stomach. They hadn't brought him here to heal, or to hide. This was something planned, carefully arranged. He could feel it in the way the 2 women looked at each other. Without warning, the one carrying him set him down in the center of the room. He tried to stand, but his legs felt like they were made of lead. The second woman stepped closer, placing her hand on his shoulder, and for the first time, she spoke in broken English. "You stay," she said, her voice low but firm. "They come soon." Daniel's pulse quickened. "Who comes?" he asked, but she didn't answer. Instead, she turned away, scanning the entrance as if listening for approaching footsteps. Moments later, faint drumming began to echo through the hall, slow at first, then faster. The sound was deep, powerful, and it seemed to thrum through the floor beneath him. Then, from every doorway, alien women began to enter, one after another, until the room was full of them, hundreds. Their eyes locked on him. The smell of strange flowers filled the air. Daniel sat frozen, unsure whether to run or stay still. The women moved with silent coordination, forming a wide circle around him. None touched him, but every gaze burned into his skin. A few whispered to each other, some even smiling, but there was no laughter. He noticed something else. The 2 women who had carried him here now stood behind him. Like guards, he could feel their presence close, their breaths steady. One of them leaned slightly forward and whispered something in her language. The other chuckled quietly. The drumming stopped. The room fell into a silence so heavy it made his ears ring. All eyes turned toward the far wall, where a curtain hung. Slowly, the fabric began to part. Daniel's hands tightened into fists. His instincts screamed that whatever stepped through that curtain would change everything. The curtain shifted slowly, revealing a tall figure stepping into the golden light. She was not armored like the others, but dressed in long, flowing silver cloth that shimmered with every move. Her skin was a softer shade of blue, her hair braided, with strands of metal and crystal that caught the glow from the walls, her eyes fixed on Daniel the moment she entered. And she didn't look away. The room seemed to bend around her presence. The circle of alien women lowered their heads slightly, but Daniel could still feel their attention on him. The figure walked forward without hurry, her bare feet silent on the polished floor. She stopped just a few steps away, tilting her head, as if studying him. "Human," she said, her voice rich and smooth, the word carrying a strange weight. "You are here." Daniel swallowed hard. "I didn't exactly choose to be here," he replied. His voice sounded small in the vast hall. Her lips curved into something between a smile and a smirk. "No unchosen ever does," she said. Her eyes moved over him, not in a way that felt gentle, but assessing, measuring, as if he were a weapon or a rare animal. A low murmur moved through the crowd, and Daniel caught a few words in their language, repeated again and again. He didn't understand them, but the way the women looked at him made his skin prickle. The tall figure reached into a small pouch at her side and drew out a thin strip of gold metal. She raised it, and the crowd grew utterly silent. She stepped forward and placed the strip against his cheek. It was warm, almost pulsing. A faint hum filled the air, and Daniel felt a strange vibration in his bones. The gold strip glowed for a moment, then faded. She pulled it back and looked at it, her expression changing just slightly, like someone confirming something important. "Yes," she said softly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "He is what we need." The crowd erupted, not with wild cheering, but with a deep, rhythmic chant, their voices layered together, vibrating in his chest. The two women who had carried him here stepped closer, their faces showing something new: pride. Daniel's mouth went dry. "Need for what?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. But the tall figure didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned to the crowd and spoke rapidly in their language. Her words made the women's chant grow louder, stronger. The sound felt almost physical, like it was pressing in on him from all sides. Finally, she looked back at him, her golden eyes locked with his. "You will understand soon," she said. "Tonight, we begin the feast." A shiver ran down Daniel's spine. The long tables he had seen earlier suddenly made sense, but not in a way that made him feel safe. He glanced toward the exit, but the two alien women behind him didn't move. Their presence was like a wall. The crowd began to break apart, moving toward the tables. The air filled with the scent of food and the low hum of alien voices. Yet, even as they ate, many kept glancing his way, as though waiting for him to do something, or for something to happen to him. The tall figure reached out, placing a hand lightly on his chest. Her touch was warm, steady, and unsettling. "You will sit at my side," she said, not as a request, but as a command. Daniel's instincts screamed again. Whatever this feast was, it was not just about food. Daniel sat at the long table beside the tall figure. The surface of the table gleamed like black glass, reflecting the golden glow of the walls. Plates of steaming food surrounded him, colors and shapes unlike anything on earth. The scent was sweet and sharp at the same time, making his head feel light. The women around the table spoke in low voices, but every so often, their eyes turned to him. Some smiled faintly, others studied him with unreadable expressions. The two who had carried him stood just behind his chair, still silent, still watchful. The tall figure leaned slightly toward him. "You wonder why you are here," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was something beneath it, something that felt like a warning. "I think I've been wondering that since I woke up," Daniel replied. His hands rested on his knees, tense, ready to push back from the table if needed. Her gaze held his. "In our world, there is an ancient law," she began. "When a man is carried through the gates by two warriors, he belongs to our people." Daniel blinked, unsure if he had heard her right. "Belongs?" She nodded slowly. "It is not slavery, it is honor. You have been chosen to give life to the next generation of our strongest bloodlines." His chest tightened. You mean, children? The faint smile on her lips didn't fade. Many children, she said. Our numbers fall each year. Our men cannot give what we need, but your kind can. The words sank into him like stones into deep water. Around the table, quiet nods and soft murmurs spread. The women didn't seem embarrassed. They looked expectant. Daniel's mind raced. His rescue hadn't been an act of kindness, it had been a capture. His body was not being protected. It was being prepared. He felt the air around him grow heavier. Why me? He asked. His voice was lower now, cautious. You carry the strength we seek. The tall figure said simply, we have searched long, and you are the one we found worthy. Daniel glanced toward the doors. The guard stood in place, unmoving. The two women behind him shifted slightly, their hands resting on the hilts of their weapons, not threatening, just reminding. The tall figure reached for a cup of golden liquid and pushed it toward him. Drink. It will help you understand, she said. He didn't move. His instincts told him that whatever was in that cup would seal his place here, lock him into this. Honor forever. The crowd waited, silent now, every gaze fixed on him. The sound of his own heartbeat filled his ears. That night, the fortress grew quiet. The sound of the feast faded, until only the soft hum of the golden lights remained. Daniel sat alone in the small chamber they had given him. His thoughts circled endlessly, every word from the tall figure, replaying in his head, chosen, honor, children each, one heavier than the last. The room had no windows, only a single doorway, covered with a heavy curtain. Two shadowed figures stood outside, their silhouettes unmoving, the women who had carried him here, his supposed protectors. Daniel's pulse quickened as a thought formed. If he didn't leave now, he might never leave at all. He scanned the room for anything useful. His eyes fell on a metal tray left behind after the meal. He picked it up, testing its weight, not as a weapon, but as a distraction. He waited, listening. The guards didn't move, didn't speak. He crouched low and slid the tray across the floor, toward the far corner. The sound was sharp against the silence. One of the shadows outside shifted. Stepping toward the noise, in that heartbeat, Daniel moved. He slipped through the curtain and darted down the opposite hallway. The air was cooler here, and the golden glow of the walls grew dim. He didn't know the way, but he followed the faint rush of wind, hoping it would lead outside. The halls twisted and turned. His footsteps, muffled by the strange smooth stone beneath him. He rounded a corner and stopped cold. The two alien women stood there, waiting, their faces calm, as if they had been expecting him all along. You cannot leave, the taller one said softly. Her voice carried no anger, only certainty. Daniel's breath came fast. I'm not staying here. The second woman stepped forward, blocking his path completely. The queen arrives tomorrow, she said. You must be ready. Ready? For what? He demanded, though part of him already knew. Neither answered. Instead, they turned, gesturing for him to follow. Their movements were graceful, but unyielding. Daniel could feel the invisible weight of choice closing in on him. The path they lead him down was not toward his chamber, but deeper into the fortress. He realized then running would not be easy. Not here, not with them, and the queen. The queen was still coming. The next day began with a deep sound that rolled through the fortress like distant thunder. It wasn't a drum or a bell, but something heavier, older. The walls seemed to vibrate with it. Daniel was led into the great hall again, this time with no food on the tables, only a wide, clear space in the center. The alien women gathered along the edges, silent and still. Their eyes followed every step he took. The two who had carried him positioned themselves on either side, their presence a reminder he was not free. The massive doors at the far end began to open. The golden light from outside poured in, blinding him for a moment. Then, she appeared. The queen was nothing like the others. She was taller, almost twice his height, her frame both powerful and graceful. Her armor shone like molten gold, shaped with flowing patterns that moved when she moved. A crown rested on her brow, not of metal, but of living light, shifting and glowing with each breath she took. Her gaze locked on him instantly. She walked forward with measured steps, and every woman in the room bowed deeply. Daniel felt the weight of her attention, as if it were a physical force pressing against him. When she stopped in front of him, the air seemed to still. "You are the human they carried," she said. Her voice was deep, layered, as though more than one person spoke at once. Daniel swallowed hard. "I guess that's me." Her golden eyes narrowed slightly. "You are not here by accident. We have searched for you, across battlefields and broken worlds. Your bloodline is rare, your body adaptable." He felt his stomach knot. Adaptable for what? The queen stepped closer, her shadow falling over him completely. "To give my people a future," she said. "Your strength, your spirit, your life fit will pass into my daughters, and their daughters after them." Her words struck like a hammer. Daniel glanced around, but no one moved. The room was a cage made of silent witnesses. "You think I'll agree to this?" he said, forcing his voice steady. The queen's lips curved in a faint smile. "You will," she said simply, "because soon you will see there is no other choice." The queen turned and gestured for him to follow. Her guard stepped aside without a word. Daniel hesitated, but the two alien women who had carried him were already moving, their silent presence urging him forward. The great hall faded behind them as they entered a long corridor lit by a soft, shifting light. At the end stood a chamber unlike anything he had seen before. The walls were covered in glowing symbols, slowly pulsing like the heartbeat of some ancient creature. In the center was a tall glass-like pillar, filled with a swirling silver mist. The air felt warmer here, alive. The queen stepped to the pillar and placed her hand against it. The mist shifted, forming shapes, faces, bodies, images that made Daniel's chest tighten. They were human, but not completely. Their skin shimmered faintly. Their eyes glowed like the alien women's. Each figure carried both strength and beauty. "These," the queen said, her voice low and heavy, "are the future. They cannot be born without you." Daniel stared, his mind trying to understand. The faces in the mist were not strangers. They looked like him, yet not. Some had his jawline, others his eyes. It was like looking at children who had never been born. "You think this is my destiny?" he asked quietly. The queen's gaze was unshakable. "It is not destiny," she said. "It is design. You were chosen before you were even born. We have watched your line for centuries, waiting for the moment one would be strong enough to survive us." His breath caught. "You mean you've been tracking my family?" She nodded slowly. "Every battle you fought, every wound you survived, was proof. You are the one, and now, you will not just live among us, you will become part of us forever." The weight of her words pressed into him. The two alien women stepped closer, their hands resting gently on his shoulders. There was no force in their touch, but no escape either. Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. The truth was too big, too heavy, and it swallowed every thought he had. The queen leaned closer, her golden eyes burning into his. "This is not the end of your story, human," she whispered. "It is the beginning." The silver mist swirled faster, the faces inside shifting and multiplying. The room seemed to pulse with life. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. His voice, when it finally came, was barely a whisper. "You've got to be kidding me."